Anime streaming platforms HiDIVE and Crunchyroll join streaming alliance with 13 other specialty platforms. This is horrendous news, like terrible news. There's no way to spin this in a positive light. This is marking basically the end of HiDIVE, because HiDIVE has been bleeding anime as of late. They have been bleeding a lot of series to Crunchyroll, like for instance Oshinoko, and they have clearly not been doing so hot because their competitor is Crunchyroll, which at this point owns basically a monopoly on anime in the West. I've talked about this over and over again, so I'm not going to get back into that. The point of the matter is that Crunchyroll has been eating away their competition, basically pushing them out of the industry or devouring them by basically buying them out. For instance, what happened to either Funimation, what happened to Right Stuff, and I see that eventually they're going to set their sights on Viz Media. But it seems like at this point, HiDIVE is at a kind of a crossroad. They either succumb to Crunchyroll, for instance, get bought out by them, or Sony in this case, or they join an alliance with them and slowly push off their death for a few years. And that more or less is what it seems like is going on here, that this is HiDIVE's last-ditch effort to try to get out of the red and try to have some form of, like, income and try to fight back against Crunchyroll, but they realize that they can't fully fight back, so they're like, I guess let's just be buddy-buddy with them, and maybe we could get some series from them and have, you know, simulcasted releases. For instance, whatever releases on Crunchyroll might come to HiDIVE. Maybe that's what they're thinking, but this is bad because the fact that they're doing a streaming alliance with Crunchyroll is something that happened kind of similar to Funimation. For those that don't know, a while back, it was years ago, back in like 2017, maybe 2016, it was a long time ago, okay? Don't quote me on the exact year, but it was way before 2019. Crunchyroll and Funimation worked together. They had an alliance where they would release series on each other's platform, and it was, at that time, it seemed very beneficial. But it obviously was kind of sinister when you really think about it, where it was like one company was going to buy out the other. And eventually, that's what exactly happened. You had Crunchyroll take over Funimation, everything from Funimation was brought over into Crunchyroll, they could soon Funimation. And I feel like that's what this is leading to. It's leading to HiDIVE being devoured by Crunchyroll, and it's just going to be the end for any competition, because I want to state this because I think this is very important context for the video. Crunchyroll does not have any direct competitors besides HiDIVE. Like, yes, you could argue Disney, Hulu, and Amazon to an extent, and sometimes Netflix, but they're not strictly anime platforms. Crunchyroll is an anime streaming service with anime merchandise. HiDIVE is as well. There is no other streaming service that is a competitor to Crunchyroll besides HiDIVE. And if HiDIVE falls, there's no competition. It's over. It's completely over. Crunchyroll has a 100% monopoly, at least on the actual main focus of anime streaming services. There is no direct competition at that point. So what this basically means is that they would have a monopoly. We already knew this, but they would definitely cement the fact that they would have a monopoly. But before we go any further, we need to read this article. And the reason why it's important to talk about this article is because it's not just the fact that HiDIVE and Crunchyroll and a few other specialty streaming services are teaming up with a streaming alliance, but they do some corpo speak that basically indicates that they want to regulate and push certain agenda within their streaming platforms. Last month, 15 specialty streaming services, including the anime services HiDIVE and Crunchyroll, announced the formation of the Specialty Streaming Advocacy Coalition Beyond Mainstream, a global streaming alliance. Per its media release, Beyond Mainstream aims to provide a unique, collective voice for specialized services and the streaming industry. The coalition will work to ensure a more equitable regulatory environment where members have a strong collective voice in the global regulatory and policy debates. And so that's a lot of corpo speak for pretty much censorship, or pushing certain prices and subscription prices, and let me explain why I'm saying that. First off, the fact that they're talking about policy debates, regulatory, global regulatory, and just regulations and stuff like that, it implies that if one company wants to say put their prices for $15 for their streaming service, all the other companies will follow suit around the exact same price, pretty much pricing out anyone else within the industry where they can't really compete back, because if they work together as an alliance, they're pretty much putting the certain amount of limit or money that they all can do, and basically they're not one-upping each other, downing each other, they're more or less working together to kind of force out anyone else in the industry that's not working with them outside of their field. It definitely feels kind of like a monopoly and malicious in a way. I don't know exactly what you would call this, but it kind of feels like a legal mafia. It shouldn't be legal, maybe it's not, but even if these companies are not, let's say, owned by one company, like Sony owns them all or something, or Microsoft or whatever, the point is that these companies are working together to probably do the exact same policies. Well, they admitted that, the exact same policies and agenda, regulatory environment, and everything. It pretty much implies that they will all kind of do the exact same thing, the exact same subtitles or whatever, how they release things, how they'll censor things, it will all be the same. So if you go to one service expecting it to be different from, let's say, Crunchyroll, like for instance, you want to go to HiDIVE because you don't like Crunchyroll's policies and how they handle things, you're going to get the exact same thing from HiDIVE because of this alliance. This is just not good. It sounds like it might be good, but in reality, it's definitely not good. These companies are definitely working together to kind of get more of a grip on the market, and HiDIVE in general, I see why they're doing this, because they're bleeding money, they're bleeding series, they need to do something, but it's more or less them slowing their death instead of just letting it happen, because that's exactly what this looks like. But this is bad. Like, this is really bad news. We knew it was going to happen. Like, I sensed HiDIVE was not going to last much longer with all the bad news that keeps coming out about them. But this really is like the icing on the cake, showcasing that it's just the end. Like, I honestly give them at max 2 years, and then something's going to happen. Either something massive is going to shift with HiDIVE, or they're going to announce a complete joint merger with Crunchyroll to some degree. For instance, they're going to allow series from HiDIVE to be on Crunchyroll and vice versa, and eventually HiDIVE is just going to be consumed by Crunchyroll. I see something like that happening, because at the end of the day, Crunchyroll, even though they own a monopoly on anime, it's still a very niche field in comparison to everything else within the industry, especially in movies and entertainment. Like, everything going on with, like, Warner Brothers right now. When it comes to Warner Brothers and Paramount and Netflix, those are big head honchos, big mega corporations pretty much competing over massive titles. But Crunchyroll, yes, they might own a monopoly on anime, but it is nothing in comparison to, let's say, something like Netflix or Paramount and Warner Brothers. That's why a lot of people are unaware of the situation that's been building over the years. But I'm going to leave it at that. I want to talk about this because this news graced my feed, and I was just like, man. It's what I expected. I called it years ago, but here we are. So, anyways, I'll leave it at that. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. Helps me out a lot. I love you guys. Be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out.